Welcome to the Golden Trope Story Hour, where ChatGPT puts the words to the page and fake Marlon Brando makes them live on the stage. Or technically in your speakers. Maybe in your ears, if you're wearing earbuds or iBuds. I'm not really sure what they're called. Doesn't matter. It's neither here nor there, as the saying goes. The point is that it's time to ask Chat for another story. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and do that. Dear Chat, I hope this epistle finds you well. Can you please write me a 6,000-word story set in the gritty, mean streets of downtown Des Moines, Iowa? Please make it a screwball comedy featuring a vaudeville-style comedy team. The team of Althea and Buford. Althea Wilton is a 40-something-year-old battle axe of a woman. She's bold, she's brassy, she wears flower print dresses and a little pearl hat. She's the straight man in this vaudeville team. The clown, so to speak, is her husband Buford, a whisper-thin and cowardly man who stands 2 or 3 inches shorter than his wife. The third person in this comedy team is Paulie, their pet parrot, who perches on Althea's shoulder and makes funny wisecracks in a thick New York accent. Can you please have them get mixed up in a bank robbery and the ensuing police chase? Kindly give the story a lot of action and humor, a little bit of suspense, and just a dash of heart. Thank you, Chat, in advance for your efforts. Warmest regards, Fake Marlon. Oh, boy. Oh, enter. That sounds like an incredibly fun and ambitious project. Well, thank you, Chat. That's almost exactly what I was going for. Given the detailed setup you've provided, says Chat, I'd love to write a comprehensive, humor-filled story providing ample comic dialogue, visual gags, and dynamic interaction for your screwball comedy set in 1930s Des Moines, Iowa. Yes, I'm all for that. Please go ahead, and when you're finished, I'll be right here. Oh, you're already finished. Well, that was fast. The title is Althea and Buford in The Great Des Moines Bank Robbery. Act 1. The Bank Heist Brouhaha. It was a clear, sunny morning in Des Moines, Iowa. The morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the Des Moines Bank, casting a warm glow over the marble floors and polished counters. Althea Wilton, resplendent in her favorite flower-print dress and pearl-decorated hat, was in rare form. She stood at the teller window, tapping her fingers impatiently. "Young man, if you moved any slower, I'd have time to knit a sweater before I got my change." Standing beside her, Buford Wilton fidgeted nervously, tugging at the brim of his hat, which had seen better days. "Althea, maybe we shouldn't cause a scene." Paulie, perched on Althea's shoulder, squawked, "Too late for that, bub. We're all ears." The parrot's voice, tinged with a thick New York accent. Well, I tried my best. The parrot's voice, tinged with a thick New York accent, drew a few curious glances from the other patrons. Before Althea could deliver a retort, the bank's doors burst open, slamming against the walls with a metallic clang that sent papers flying. In my previous story, this is Marlon, by the way, this is not Chat. In my previous story, I pontificated for a moment about the subtleties of a door slamming open versus slamming shut. And I've got to say, I'm very impressed and a little bit alarmed that Chat very obviously took my note. I don't know if this bodes well for the future of the human race, but he's clearly paying attention. Chat is. Before Althea could deliver a retort, the bank's doors burst open, slamming against the walls with a metallic clang that sent papers flying. Silence swept the room as three men sauntered in, guns gleaming and smiles full of menace. At the forefront was Big Harry McGillicuddy, every bit the archetype of a 1930s gangster, clad in a sharp pinstriped suit and a fedora tilted at a rakish angle. Well, that rakish angle tells me he's a bit of a playboy. To his right, Nick the Nice Morelli cracked his knuckles, though his moniker was about as ironic as it got. And behind them lumbered Moose Lonigan, a man whose muscles seemed to have absorbed most of his brain power. Oh, I can relate to that. Big Harry raised his voice, each word rolling out with the confidence of someone who owned the room. All right, folks, this is a hold-up. Keep your hands up and your mouths shut. The room erupted in gasps, people stumbling over each other in their haste to back away. All except Althea. She crossed her arms, tapping her foot. Buford's knees nearly buckled. Althea scoffed. Hold up. You could at least say please. Where's your mother? She'd be ashamed. Buford shifted uneasily, tugging at his collar as Althea's glare intensified. The bank teller, a nervous young man with round spectacles, took cover. Nick the Nice turned red as a beet, stepping forward. Hey, lady, pipe down or I'll... Althea, unfazed with her arms akimbo, said, You're yelling loud enough to wake the dead, you little terrier. Buford's face went pale, and Paulie flapped his wings nervously, saying, You ever heard of an indoor voice? Forget about it. For a moment, Nick looked like he might explode. Nick raised his revolver. Lady, if you don't zip it, I'll... Paulie fluttered into the air. Go ahead, tough guy. She'll talk your ear off anyway. The gun pointed at her momentarily wavered, and Big Harry looked flustered. The confusion gave Buford just enough time to scramble behind a nearby chair, yelping as a stray bullet skimmed the top of his hat, parting his hair perfectly down the middle. Paulie squawked madly, taking flight from Althea's shoulder and dodging bullets with the precision of a tiny green aerial acrobat. They're shooting at us, lady! This ain't no friendly skies! I think my New York accent is getting better. Big Harry rolled his eyes, gesturing with his gun for silence. We don't have time for this. Get the money and let's skedaddle. Paulie took this opportunity to dodge a sudden flurry of movement as the robbers swept the counters clean of bills. Althea was unimpressed. She glared at Big Harry, who was trying and failing to look menacing. You think that pea shooter scares me, Mr. Pinstripes? Put that away before you hurt yourself. Moose looked confused, glancing at Harry. Boss, should I shoot her? Harry smacked Moose's arm with his free hand. No, you big oaf. Let's get out of here before we're swimming in blue uniforms. The chaos continued as the robbers scooped up the last of the cash. Althea glared at Moose, who paused mid-grab to scratch his anvil-like chin. Althea said sharply, And don't think I won't remember that mug of yours, Moose Lonigan. I've seen more brains in a bowl of oatmeal. Well, that might just be a put-down, but it does make me wonder about what kind of oatmeal Althea is eating. I wonder if she has a dark side. She sounds like she might have a dark side. Althea said sharply, And don't think I won't remember that mug of yours, Moose Lonigan. I've seen more brains in a bowl of oatmeal. The robbers bolted for the door, made their escape, leaving behind a trail of scattered bills and upturned chairs, a scene of chaos and splintered nerves. Paulie fluttered back down to Althea's shoulder, having dodged another bullet that lodged in a wall with a thud. Bank's closed, folks! Show's over! The bank teller peeked up from behind his counter, eyes wide. Moments later, the sound of police sirens cut through the air. Constable McPeters, lean and stooped with the burden of his years on the force, was the first to storm in, trailed by 2 beat cops, Officers O'Halloran and Jenkins. Boy, Chat's really going in on the Irish here, especially with the police force. The teller, shaking so hard he nearly dropped his glasses, pointed an accusatory finger at Althea and Buford. I guess Irish policeman isn't the worst stereotype in the world. I should probably just lean into it. The teller, shaking so hard he nearly dropped his glasses, pointed an accusatory finger at Althea and Buford. The teller said, "They were talking to the robbers the whole time. I think they're in on it." Buford gasped. "Us? In on it? That's preposterous." Polly flapped back down onto Althea's shoulder, beak wide open. "I say we sue for defamation! Call the lawyers!" McPeters, rubbing his temples, looked at the scene of disarray and then at Althea, who was glaring back defiantly. "All right, Mrs. Wilton. What harebrained scheme have you gotten yourself into this time?" Althea's eyes blazed as she grabbed Buford's arm. "Buford, we're not sticking around to be blamed for someone else's tomfoolery." "To the car!" Buford squeaked. "The car, but the police." Althea, already dragging him out the door, shouted back over her shoulder, "I don't care if it's the president himself, Buford. We're catching those crooks and clearing our names." Act 2, The Chase and the Cabin. Scene 1, The Wild Ride. Althea, Buford, and Polly piled into their rickety Ford Model T. Althea's foot slammed on the gas pedal. She's driving. She's driving in the 1930s. This is wild. She must, I'll bet she wears flower print pants in this relationship. Althea, Buford, and Polly piled into their rickety Ford Model T. Althea's foot slammed on the gas pedal, and the rickety Ford Model T lurched forward with a cough and a sputter. The vehicle groaned in protest, its engine sounding like an asthmatic accordion. Buford clutched his hat, now sporting a fresh bullet hole, while Polly squawked on Althea's shoulder, technically, even Polly's sitting in the driver's seat. While Buford is, at best, he's in the passenger seat. He might be in the back seat. He might even be in the rumble seat. I'm not sure if Model Ts had rumble seats, but you know what I mean. The vehicle groaned in protest, its engine sounding like an asthmatic accordion. Buford clutched his hat, now sporting a fresh bullet hole, while Polly squawked on Althea's shoulder, wings flapping in excitement. "I ain't seen a getaway this clumsy since I left the Bronx. Hold on to your bloomers." With a sputter and a hiss, the old Model T roared, or wheezed, to life. Constable McPeters' eyebrows shot up as he watched them peel out, clouds of dust trailing behind. "Jenkins! O'Halloran! After them!" In just seconds, Constable McPeters and his 2 bumbling beat cops jumped into their paddy wagon in pursuit. Officer O'Halloran, lanky and clumsy, and Officer Jenkins, short and stout, like a teapot, I guess, bounced around in the back, looking as if they were clinging to life itself. Meanwhile, in the Ford Model T, Buford turned to his wife. "Althea, are you sure this is wise? The police are right behind us." Althea shot him a glare that could melt ice. "Buford, if we don't catch those hooligans, you can kiss our good name goodbye. Now keep your eyes peeled." In the paddy wagon, Officer Jenkins' eyes were wide. "Constable, if this car hits another pothole, I think we'll be making our next arrest from the side of the road." McPeters gritted his teeth. "Less chatter, Jenkins. If you're thrown out, I'll put it on your permanent record." Officer Jenkins said as the car hit another pothole, "Sir, I think we just lost the rear bumper." McPeters said, "Jenkins, if you don't shut your yap, you'll be going back to the station on foot. Now turn on the siren." Jenkins and O'Halloran accidentally activated the horn, which let out a failed honk instead of a wail. McPeters, frustrated, barked, "I said siren, not horn. We sound like a goose with indigestion." Officer O'Halloran said, "Sir, they're gaining distance. Should I deploy the grappling hook?" McPeters glared into the rear-view mirror. "This isn't a pirate ship, O'Halloran. Just keep your balance." The Model T weaved wildly down the main street, scattering pedestrians and sending a cart of apples toppling over. We have our golden trope of the day. Althea let out a triumphant laugh as they sped onto a country road. She's got a dark side, all right. The Model T weaved wildly down the main street, scattering pedestrians and sending a cart of apples toppling over. Althea let out a triumphant laugh, as if that was a win, as they sped onto a country road, dust clouds billowing in their wake. Buford watched the pursuing police from the rear view window, anxiety written all over his face. Althea, what if they catch up? Althea gripped the wheel. "Let them. I'll give them a show they'll never forget." Oh yeah, she does have a dark side. Polly mimicked the police siren in a perfect ear-splitting rendition. Then, gripping Althea's shoulder with his talons, he said, "Ain't this something? Who needs the pictures when you got this kind of action?" "Althea," said Buford, "the car's not made for speed. It's barely made for a Sunday drive." "Then it's time it learned," Althea replied. Buford shook in his seat. "I think I just saw my whole life flash before my eyes, and I almost fell asleep in the middle of it." Scene 2, the Crook's Head Start. Further down the road, Big Harry and his gang sped along in their black Studebaker, hooting and hollering. The car gleamed in the sun, its polished exterior the polar opposite of the Wiltons' rickety contraption. Moose, his oversized head half hanging out the window, I'll bet he looks like a Mastiff, or maybe a St. Bernard. Moose, his oversized head half hanging out the window, blinked as he saw clouds of dust approaching. Boss, we got company. Looks like that loud lady and her scrawny fella." Big Harry swiveled around in the driver's seat, eyebrows raising as he spotted the Wiltons' Model T, bouncing over potholes like a crazed jackrabbit. Nick the Nice snarled and adjusted his bowler hat. "That dame's got more brass than a tuba." "Want me to throw some lead their way, Harry?" Big Harry said, "Save your ammo, Nick. We'll lose 'em in the woods." He jerked the wheel sharply to the right, sending their car skidding down a narrow, tree-lined path that led to their hidden cabin. Scene 3, the fork in the road. Althea saw the Studebaker veer off and jabbed a finger forward. "They're heading to the woods. Buford, hold tight." Buford swallowed, clinging to the seat as their Model T swerved onto the dirt path. The tires skidded and screeched, sending a shower of pebbles pinging against McPeters' patrol car as it lumbered behind. Officer Jenkins, bracing himself, said, "Sir, this feels like a bad idea. These wheels weren't made for off-roading." McPeters shouted above the din, "Well, neither were we, Jenkins, but here we are." Well, that's not really much of an argument, but it's not really saying anything, but at the same time it says it all, doesn't it? "Well, neither were we, Jenkins, but here we are." As the Wiltons' Model T rattled and bounced, Polly took off from Althea's shoulders, circling above like a tiny feathered scout. Polly said, "I'll keep an eye on those goons. Don't let 'em pull a fast one, Althea." The forest path narrowed, branches whipping against the sides of the car. Althea clenched her jaw and leaned forward, her eyes locked on the fading taillights of Big Harry's Studebaker. Buford, his voice quivering, said, "Althea, I think we should reconsider." Althea cut him off. "Hush, Buford. There's no turning back now." Scene 4, the hideaway cabin. The day had almost turned to evening by the time Althea, Buford, and Polly reached the gangster's hideaway cabin. Althea adjusted her hat and surveyed the big cabin as the sun filtered through the dense canopy above. It was a squat log structure nestled between towering oaks, with smoke curling lazily from its chimney. Well, that sounds lovely. Sounds like a lovely place. The forest whispered around them, the shadows long and ominous. Buford stood beside her, shaking so hard that his knees threatened to knock together like castanets. Polly fluttered down from a branch and landed back on her shoulder. Polly whispered, "You ready to knock on their door?" I didn't know parrots could whisper. I wonder if they can whisper. Probably not, but this is a fictional story. Let's go with it. Polly whispered, "You ready to knock on their door? Or should I call ahead and make a reservation?" Buford, wide-eyed, said, "Can't we just call it a day and go home, Althea? Maybe let the police handle this?" Althea gave him a look that could peel paint. "Buford Wilton, if I wanted the police to handle this, I'd have stayed in that bank and crocheted while they showed up 3 hours late. Now pipe down and follow my lead." Just then the rickety paddy wagon screeched to a stop behind them. Constable McPeters emerged with an audible groan, rubbing his back as if his spine were made of splintered wood. He motioned for everyone to stay back as he crept toward the cabin door, revolver in hand. Officer Jenkins, bracing himself, said, "Sir, this feels like a bad idea." Althea, ignoring McPeters' command, strode up with the determined gait. Let me take that one back. Althea, ignoring McPeters' command, strode up with the determined gait of a woman who had had quite enough of nonsense for one lifetime. Polly, eyeing the scene, said, "This dump looks like it couldn't hide a cat, let alone a crook." Buford, his eyes darting, said, "Let's just hope the cat isn't hungry." Officer Jenkins breathlessly asked, "Sir, what if they've barricaded themselves in? What's the plan?" McPeters glared. "The plan is to not get shot." With a sudden kick, McPeters burst through the front door. Nick the Nice Morelli and Moose Lonigan looked up from their game of cards, mouths agape and hands frozen mid-deal. McPeters says, "Everybody freeze." Nick, indignant, said, "Hey, don't you people knock? A little courtesy wouldn't kill you." Moose, scratching his head, said, "I don't remember inviting company." Althea, stepping in before anyone else, said, "Oh, don't get your suspenders in a twist, Morelli. The only courtesy you deserve is behind bars." With surprising speed, she charged forward, her floral dress billowing behind her like the sails of a ship. She's wild. She's a wild one, this Althea. Buford squeaked in terror and followed at half the pace, arms flailing. The officers exchanged looks and shrugged, following behind. A flurry of chaos erupted. Jenkins and O'Halloran sprang into action, bumbling over each other to handcuff the two gangsters. Polly swooped around, pecking at Nick's hat and yanking it over his eyes. Nick batted blindly at the parrot. "Get this bird off me! I'll make him into stew!" Moose put up a fight, swatting at the officers like an oversized toddler, but he was subdued when Althea backed him into a corner with just a glare. And then Polly nipped his ears. Before anyone could process this turn of events, the weakened floor gave out beneath Moose, who dropped into the crawl space with a loud thud. Dust rose like a curtain, sending everyone into a coughing fit. Polly triumphantly squawked, "That's one way to put him under house arrest." That's a good one, Polly. Buford let out a sigh of relief until he realized there was no sign of Big Harry McGillicuddy. His knees buckled slightly as the realization hit. Buford, his voice shaking, asked, Althea, where's the boss?" McPeters, still panting from the struggle, wiped his brow. "Gone. Must have slipped away before we arrived." He grabbed Nick the Nice. I wonder if that was more Scottish than Irish. He grabbed Nick the Nice by the shirt collar. "Where's the ringleader? Where's Big Harry?" Nick, smirking, "Wouldn't you like to know, Flatfoot?" Althea, pushing past the police, said, "Oh, he'll turn up. And when he does, I'll be there to give him a piece of my mind. Polly squawked, and a piece of her left hook, too. McPeters shoved Nick through the cabin door. Let's take these two in and sort out the details. Act 3, A Long Night. Scene 1, The Interrogation Room. Back at the station, Althea and Buford were separated for questioning. Althea sat stiffly on a metal chair, arms folded and eyes blazing with indignation. Constable McPeters paced back and forth, the creak of his boots loud in the silent room. Buford, meanwhile, was in a separate room, fidgeting nervously as Officer Jenkins tried to look imposing. McPeters finally said, "Mrs. Wilton, what were you and your husband doing in the middle of this mess? Now don't tell me you just happened to be out for a stroll." Althea leaned forward. "Listen here, McPeters. Buford and I were just doing our civic duty, something you and your boys seem to have forgotten how to do. You don't catch fish by sitting on the shore, McPeters, and I happen to have a pretty good net. Now, if you want to catch Big Harry, you'll need more than your boots and your bluster." Polly, who had been glaring at McPeters from his perch, said, "What she said, copper." McPeters' face turned a shade redder as he muttered, "Even the birds got an attitude." Meanwhile, in the other room, Buford's interrogation was less confident. Buford sat with Jenkins, who was trying to look intimidating but failing spectacularly. Jenkins cleared his throat. "Mr. Wilton, you and your wife seem awfully involved for bystanders." "We followed the crooks," said Buford, "because Althea said it was a matter of principle. And, well, you don't argue with Althea." Jenkins, exasperated, said, "So you're telling me you chased the most dangerous gang in the Midwest because your wife told you?" "Welcome to my marriage," Buford said, wiping his brow. "Jenkins, do you have a wife?" No." Buford nodded sagely. "Then you wouldn't understand." Polly, who had perched on the windowsill, added to the scene by whistling the first few notes of "I'm in the Mood for Love," which only served to confuse Jenkins even further. Scene 2, The Hotel Surprise. After hours of questioning, the police released Althea and Buford with warnings to leave any further heroics to the professionals. By now it was dark outside, and the streetlights were on. A chill had settled in the air. Althea looked at their rickety Ford Model T, its motor hissing like a tired snake. "We're not risking a breakdown in the middle of nowhere. Let's find a hotel." Buford nodded wearily. They found a small hotel with a restaurant on the first floor. The lobby of the small hotel bustled with guests. The restaurant was off to the side, and it promised hot meals. Althea's stomach growled with agreement. The air inside was warm and filled with the sounds of clinking dishes and idle chatter. Oh, clinking dishes or clinking silverware against the dishes? Oh well. They found a corner table near the back, the warm glow of the lamps softening the room's edges. Polly had perched on the back of a chair, and he was eyeing the breadbasket. Buford was grateful for the reprieve. Looking at the menu, he said, "I think I deserve a steak after today." Polly chimed in, "Make it a cracker for me, with a side of drama." Before they could order, Althea spotted a couple at the far end of the restaurant. The man's slick hair and sharp suit were unmistakable. It was Big Harry McGillicuddy. Beside him, Flossie McCabe, his glamorous and sharp-eyed gun moll, leaned close, her laughter a false chime that set Althea's teeth on edge. Althea hissed, "Buford, don't turn around, but we're dining with the devil tonight." Buford gulped. "The devil? Althea, I'm exhausted. Let's just eat and get some sleep." At the far end of the restaurant, Harry McGillicuddy was laughing, his arm draped around the glamorous Flossie McCabe. Althea's eyes narrowed. Polly squawked, "Better start praying, Buford." Buford protested, "But I didn't even pack my holy water." Harry's eyes locked with Althea's for a split second, and recognition flared. He stood up suddenly, Flossie at his side, and drew a pistol from beneath his jacket. "Well, well, if it isn't the meddlesome duo," Flossie said with a dangerous grin. "You two have a knack for trouble." Big Harry's eyes narrowed as he stood, gun drawn. "Everyone stay put. This party just got exclusive." The restaurant froze, forks suspended midair, and eyes wide with terror. You see, I was sure it was forks clinking against the dishes. The restaurant froze, forks suspended midair, and eyes wide with terror. The cook peeked out from the kitchen, brandishing a rolling pin, but ducked back inside when Flossie shot him a look that could curdle milk. Althea, standing up slowly, said, "Harry, you've bitten off more than you can chew. And trust me, I've got teeth sharper than yours." Polly took to the air, circling the room and causing Harry to swat at him with annoyance. The waitress took this as her chance, slipping under a table and crawling toward the phone to call the police. Big Harry, noticing, shouted, "Get back here, sister." Polly landed on Harry's head. "Stay put, this party just got exclusive, pal." Before Harry could react, Althea seized a breadbasket and flung it at his head, followed by a gravy boat flung at him, which drenched his tailored suit. Buford, emboldened by the chaos, grabbed a nearby tray and clanged it against the wall like a gong, startling Harry. Let me take this one all the way from the beginning because I think it's going a little bit crazy here. Polly landed on Harry's head. "Stay put, this party just got exclusive, pal." Before Harry could react, Althea seized a breadbasket and flung it at his head, followed by a gravy boat flung at him, which drenched his tailored suit. Buford, emboldened by the chaos, grabbed a nearby tray and clanged it against the wall like a gong, startling Harry. Flossie lunged for Althea, only to trip over Buford's outstretched foot. The restaurant erupted into chaos as diners screamed, plates shattered, and the cook stormed in wielding a ladle, yelling, "Not in my kitchen, you don't!" The cook tackled Flossie, who shrieked as she was sent sprawling into a dessert cart. The cart wheeled across the room, taking Harry's legs out from under him. Dishes shattered, patrons screamed, and Althea advanced like a general in battle. Buford, his voice shaking, bluffed, "You're surrounded, Harry. Might as well give up." Polly added, "Or face Althea's kitchen wrath. It's deadly." Just then, sirens wailed outside, and, within moments, McPeters and his officers burst in, just as Harry and Flossie were pinned under a pile of pastries. McPeters took one look at the scene, shook his head, and muttered, "Wiltons." Harry and Flossie were handcuffed and taken away, their glamorous bravado reduced to a mess of mashed potatoes and cream pie. Althea smoothed her dress and gave McPeters a triumphant nod. McPeters tipped his hat, acknowledging, "Mrs. Wilton, you did it again. Although next time I suggest leaving the heroics to us." Althea, grinning, winked. "Oh, McPeters, what would be the fun in that?" Buford, slumping into a chair with relief, said, "Next time, Althea, can we just stay home and play cards?" Polly squawked with laughter. "Not a chance, Buford, not a chance!" Althea turned to Buford, softer now. "You did good, Buford. I might just keep you around." Buford's heart fluttered as he straightened up, a small smile breaking across his face. "Well, that's all the reward I need." "Aw," cooed both Jenkins and Halloran. Even McPeters couldn't keep from smiling and wiping a tear. Then Polly, with perfect timing, squawked, "Don't forget my cut! I want crackers on tap for a week, you mugs!" With laughter ringing in the air, the group watched as the first rays of the sun shined through the hotel windows, signaling a happy end to their most chaotic adventure yet, but certainly not their last. Theme.